The cemetery was the kind of place that didn't just hold the dead, it felt like it was part of them. The trees leaned in close, their gnarled branches scraping against the crumbling stone walls like skeletal fingers. Weeds choked the pathways, and the air smelled of damp earth and something else, something sour like old meat left in the sun. I'd been filming forgotten graves for months, but this place was different. It didn't just feel abandoned, it felt hidden. I almost missed the grave entirely. It was tucked away in the farthest corner, half swallowed by ivy. The stone so weathered it looked more like a broken tooth jutting from the ground than a marker for the dead. No name, no dates. It's just a faint, jagged edge where the carving had once been. I ran my fingers over it, and the second I did, a cold rush swept up my arm, like dipping my hand into a winter river. I jerked back. The groundskeeper, an old man with yellowed nails and a face like cracked leather, had been watching me from a distance. When I asked about the grave, his expression shut down. "That one ain't meant to be touched," he muttered. Spitting into the dirt? Sealed for a reason. He wouldn't say more, just turned and walked away, his boots kicking up little clouds of dust. That should have been enough to make me leave it alone. But the camera in my bag felt heavy, like it was pulling me forward. I had a channel to run, a story to uncover, something about that grave, the way it tilted slightly. Like it was trying to lift itself out of the earth made my skin prickle. I came back the next morning before sunrise, armed with brushes, a trowel, and my camera. The birds had gone silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath as I started, scraping away the moss. The stone beneath was darker than the others, almost black in places, with deep grooves that didn't look like natural wear. Then, as I cleared the last patch of grime, I saw it a symbol carved into the center, a circle, sliced through with jagged lines like a wheel with broken spokes. I filmed it, my breath coming too fast. The camera glitched for a second. A flicker of static, but I didn't think much of it. Not until later, when I played the footage back and heard the whispering. It wasn't the wind, and it wasn't me. It was coming from behind the grave. The whispering in the footage was low, guttural, a man's voice, but wrong, like his throat had been packed with wet soil. I rewound it again and again, my fingers trembling, but the words never got clearer. Just fragments. Turn back and he waits. Then, in the corner of the screen, something moved. A shadow, tall and thin, standing just beyond the trees. My breath hitched. I hadn't seen anyone there when I was filming. I zoomed in, but the shadow was going to be replaced by a single, glitching frame where the symbol on the grave pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. I should have stopped, deleted the footage, walked away. But the grave had sunk into my mind like a hook. That night I barely slept. Every creak of my apartment sounded like footsteps. Every flicker of the streetlight outside my window looked like a figure watching. By dawn, I was back at the cemetery, this time with a shovel. If the groundskeeper wouldn't tell me the truth, I'd dig it up myself. The earth around the grave was too soft, as if something had been disturbing it for years. My shovel hit wood faster than it should have, not a coffin, but a rotted wooden slab buried just beneath the surface. I pried it up, my pulse roaring in my ears. Underneath was another stone, flat and wide, like a lid, and carved into it. So, deep the grooves looked fresh despite the century of dirt, was a name, Elias Rook. The air turned icy.
Ow.
My breath fogged in front of me. Despite the summer heat, I traced the letters, and beneath them, smaller words in Latin. Non mortu, non mortu, non dormient. The dead do not sleep. Then the ground shifted. A muffled thud came from below the stone, like something had knocked against it from underneath. I stumbled back, my boots slipping in the loose dirt. The sound didn't come again, but the silence was worse. I knew something was listening. I ran, left my shovel, my bag, everything. But as I sped away in my car, my reflection in the rearview mirror didn't move when I did. It just stared, its mouth stretching into a smile I'd never made. And behind me, etched into the fogged glass, was the same damn symbol from the grave. The symbol on my rearview mirror didn't fade. No matter how hard I scrubbed, it wasn't. Scratched into the glass, it was burnt, seared into the surface like a brand. I covered it with tape, then a scarf. But by the next morning, the fabric had rotted away. It's blackened and brittle, as if it had been buried for decades. I couldn't ignore it anymore. This wasn't just some creepy coincidence. A grave had marked me. I needed answers. And the only place left to look was the town's forgotten records. The local library was a crumbling brick building with a smell of mildew and yellowed paper. The librarian, a woman with steel-gray hair and hollow cheeks, went rigid when I mentioned Elias Rook's name. "That's not history," she hissed, glancing around like the shelves themselves might be listening. "That's a curse." But money talks louder than fear, and after slipping her $100, she led me to a back room filled with rotting ledgers and boxes of unsorted documents. There, buried under a stack of moldering newspapers from 1923, I found a single, brittle page torn from a church record. The handwriting was spidery, frantic, as if the writer's hand had been shaking. It told of Elias Rook, the cemetery caretaker who'd been caught digging up the body of a child named Thomas Vey. But he wasn't stealing jewelry or bones. He was feeding the corpse, ground-up herbs, animal blood, and something referred to only as the black salt. The priest who wrote the account claimed Rook was trying to wake the boy. But when the townspeople dragged him away, the child's grave was already empty. Not robbed, not decayed. Empty, like something had crawled out. The last line made my skin prickle. They buried Rook alive that night. Sealed his grave with the old rites, and prayed whatever he called up would stay forgotten. I barely made it home before the nightmare started.
At night,
I dreamed of hands slick with mud and squirming with worms, pushing up through the soil of Elias Rook's grave. And standing over it, watching, was a small figure in tattered burial clothes. A child with no eyes, just dark, hollow pits that dripped black onto the earth. When I awoke, my bedroom floor was wet, not with water, with mud. Went leading from the window to the foot of my bed were tiny, bare footprints. The footprints were still damp when I scrambled out of bed, and my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. I told myself it was a pranksome, sick joke from a viewer who'd tracked me down after the video went viral. But deep down I knew. The mud wasn't from outside. It was thick, clotted with something darker, something that smelled like wet rot and old copper. And the footprints. They weren't just on the floor. They trailed up the side of my bed frame, as if whatever made them had climbed up to watch me sleep. I grabbed my phone, ready to call the police, when a notification flashed on the screen. New comment on my last video? The username was just a string of numbers, and the message made my blood freeze. "You shouldn't have dug so deep. Now he knows where you live." I threw the phone down like it had burned me, but the screen stayed lit, the comment still visible. Then slowly the letters rearranged themselves, forming new words without anyone touching the device. "He's in the walls." That's when the scratching started. At first, it was faint, just a whisper of movement behind the plaster, like a rat burrowing. But within minutes, it grew louder, more deliberate. Scritch-scratch, not random, not animal. Rhythmic, like fingers dragging along the inside of the wall, searching for a way out. I backed toward the door, my breath coming in ragged gasps, just as the drywall near my bed bulged, as if something was pressing against it from the other side. A single crack split the surface, and from inside, a wet, gurgling voice whispered, "You woke me up." I ran, didn't grab shoes, didn't look back. The second I hit the street, my phone buzzed again. A new email, this time with an attachment, a photo of my own bedroom taken from inside the closet. The timestamp was 5 minutes ago. And in the corner, barely visible in the shadows, stood a small figure, its face pressed against the crack. In the wall, the subject line read, "You forgot to say goodbye." The street outside was deserted, a kind of late-night silence that feels like the whole world has been emptied out, just for you or whatever is hunting you. My bare feet slapped against the cold pavement as I ran, my lungs burning, but no matter how far I went, the scratching followed. Not just in my head now, no. I could hear it echoing from the alleyways, from beneath parked cars, even from the drains under my feet. Like something was moving through the dark places of the world just beneath the surface. My phone buzzed again. In my hand, the screen cracked, but still glowing, and this time it wasn't a message or an email. It was a live video feed. My feed. From my channel. But I wasn't the one streaming. The footage showed my apartment, the wall where the crack had split open now, gaping wide, the plaster peeled back like rotten skin. Crawling out of it, slow and jerky, was a child, or what used to be one. Its skin was gray, stretched too tight over bones that didn't sit right, and its mouth hung open too wide, strings of blackened saliva dripping. Onto the floor as it dragged itself forward on limbs that bent the wrong way, the camera panned. To my bed, the sheets still rumpled from where I'd bolted, and then the thing's head snapped up, its hollow eyes staring straight into the lens, straight into me, before the feed cut to a symbol, the same one from the grave burning itself. Into the screen. I stumbled into a 24-hour diner. My hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the counter as I begged the cashier to call the police. She took one look at me barefoot, wild-eyed, my clothes streaked with mud that wasn't there before, and reached for the phone, but then she froze. Her gaze locked onto something behind me, her face draining of color. I didn't want to turn around. I couldn't. But the diner's greasy reflection in the napkin dispenser showed me enough. A small figure standing just outside the glass door, its fingers tapping lightly against the pane. Not scratching. Knocking, the cashier whispered. "Is that your kid?" And then the power went out. The darkness in the diner wasn't just an absence of light, it was alive, thick and suffocating, pressing against my skin like cold, greasy hands. The cashier's scream was cut off mid-breath, replaced by a wet, crunching sound and the slow drip of something heavy hitting the linoleum. I fumbled for my phone, the cracked screen casting a sickly glow, just bright enough to reveal the thing standing behind the counter where the cashier had been. It wasn't the child anymore. It was changing, its limbs stretching too long, its jaw unhinging with a series of pops as its skin split open like overripe fruit, revealing glistening muscle beneath, but no blood. No, whatever this thing was, it didn't bleed like it should. The phone's light flickered, and in that split second of darkness, I heard it move, a rustle of unnatural motion, the sound of bones grinding against each other as it reshaped itself in the black. When the light steadied, it was closer. Much closer. Its face was inches from mine, its breath reeking of turned earth and spoiled meat, and when it spoke, its voice wasn't a child's anymore. It was layered, a chorus of whispers, Elias Rook's rasp, the cashier's dying gurgle, my own voice stolen from the videos I'd filmed. "You remembered me," it crooned, tilting its head too far to the side. "Now I get to remember you." I bolted for the door, my shoulder slamming into the thing as I passed. Its body gave way like rotten wood, crumbling under the impact, but I knew it wouldn't stop it. Nothing would. The streets were still empty, the streetlights dark, but I could hear them now, whispers, everywhere, rising from the sewers, the alleyways. The parked cars with their shattered windows, they weren't just in my head. They were real, and they were getting louder. My phone buzzed again, the screen flashing with a new notification, a direct message from my own channel. Sent after I'd deleted it. Look up. I shouldn't have. But I did. The thing was on the roof of the diner, its elongated limbs bent at impossible angles as it skittered across the shingles like a spider. Its head twisted all the way around to stare down at me, its grin splitting wider, wider, till its face was just a gaping maw of needled teeth and darkness, and then it jumped. The impact never came. 1 second. The creature was midair, its twisted body blocking out the moon. The next, the world rippled. Like reality itself was a thin sheet of water, and something far beneath had just stirred. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for teeth and tearing flesh, but there was only silence. When I dared to look again, the street was empty. No monster, no whispers. Just the flicker of a dying streetlight, and my own panicked breaths fogging the air. I should have felt relief, but the quiet was worse, because now I knew this wasn't over. It was never over. The ground beneath me trembled, a deep groaning shudder like the earth itself was waking up. Cracks spiderwebbed through the asphalt. Thin at first, then widening, splitting open like hungry mouths. From the darkness below, something moved. Not the creature, but something older. Something that made the air hum with a sound just below hearing, a vibration that set my teeth on edge and my bones aching. The cracks spread faster, racing toward the cemetery, toward his grave. Because that's where this would end, where it had to end. I ran not away this time, but toward it. The cemetery gates hung broken, the iron twisted like something had forced its way out. The grave was wide open, the earth around it churned up as if something massive had clawed free. But the hole wasn't empty. Elias Rook's coffin lay shattered, the wood blackened and warped. And inside, curled like a sleeping child, was me, not a corpse, not a rotting thing. Me, alive, breathing, smiling, the realization, like a physical blow, this wasn't just a haunting. It was a trait, the thing that had chased me, the whispers, the horrors. They weren't trying to kill me, they were trying to replace me. And as the thing wearing my skin sat up, its eyes gleaming with a light that wasn't human, I understood the final terrible truth. The dead do not sleep. But soon I would.
Subscribe and press the bell icon so that you never miss the amazing video.